Well, hello and good afternoon, everyone. It's Tim and Virginia Barnes from Barnesviolins. It's been a minute or two since we've seen you last time, but here we are, and we're finally getting around to actually answering one of the many comments that we had on one of our previous videos. And I just want to read you the comment. It says, "Hi, I'm a 7th grader and I have played viola for a year. Do you recommend staying with it through high school or learning something new after middle school? I want to learn many instruments."
Before we get going, we would encourage you to like and subscribe. It encourages us to keep on going. That's a great question. In particular, this person's comment, and thank you for the comment, started viola and wants to learn many instruments. It's very important, if you want to be a composer, to understand and learn about as many instruments as possible. You know, you started with viola, which is great because you will learn to play viola properly, not as a violinist switching over to viola. You can always tell when somebody's a violinist and then they change over to viola. The point is that viola also has what's called the alto clef. Tough clef to learn. So you're kind of starting with the hardest anyway. Then, you know, you could go to a bass clef instrument or a treble clef instrument and cover your bases with learning to read music in different clefs. And, you know, if that's the reason for wanting to learn many different instruments, it's the note reading too, and then being able to compose in all those different clefs is super important. Now, backing up to, you know, a 7th grader, had just started viola, I would also say, as somebody who taught violin for 30 years and experienced many students, that the longer you stay with an instrument, the more you master it, the more you understand it, and then adding other instruments is an and, not an or, where, you know, you're like, okay, I'm doing viola now, and then I'm stopping. And then I'm going to do something else now, and then stopping. I think it should be an and. And the reason I say that it's okay in my mind was I had the uncanny situations many times where somebody would say, you know what, I started playing guitar too. And all of a sudden, because they were all of a sudden getting better at the violin for no apparent reason. It's not like they were big practicers or anything. But they were getting better at the violin and retaining things more and understanding things better. And I think somehow learning another instrument helps you learn exponentially more as a musician.
I think I might have a little bit of an unpopular opinion about this with some of our viewers. But before I get into my opinion, I think I'd like to say, I think it really comes down to what your objectives are with this. As Mrs. Barnes said, if you're considering being a composer or a conductor or something that really looks at the larger picture of many instruments and many clefs and understanding how that works and how it works combined and as a unit and whatnot, absolutely it's a very good idea to be well versed in many instruments without question. If that's what your objective is, great. If you're playing a stringed instrument, and like a lot of students, the main objective most of the time would be to master that instrument. And so if you're going to do that, there's some fundamentals, just like if you're going to be an athlete and deal with sports or anything that just requires a lot of discipline, a lot of daily practice, a lot of repetition. It's not all a grind, and I don't mean to make it all sound negative, but it is a lot of work. And it takes a lot of commitment, and it's very easy to get distracted with, oh, I'm getting kind of tired of practicing the viola. Boy, this clarinet looks good, or I think I want to try the saxophone, or boy, I'd love to play the piano. And again, there's nothing wrong with any of these thoughts or considerations, but at the end of the day, if one really wants to get good at one instrument, it requires a lot of discipline, stick-to-itiveness, and overcoming distractions. And sometimes desiring and wanting to play different things is nothing but a distraction. So I'm certainly not saying that that's always the case, but my opinion is it really depends on what your goals and objectives are. If you want to be a really, really great violist, then I would probably recommend that you minimize your exposure to other instruments. If you're interested in being a composer or a conductor, or really the whole thing of music and instruments is just more of a fun kind of perspective, and you're just interested in a lot of different things, and you don't have a burning desire to really master any one of them, then certainly try different instruments. So that would be my opinion about this.
Okay, I was going to add that to the person that made the comment, that if you're going to continue viola as your primary instrument and you're thinking of adding an instrument, I was going to suggest piano, because piano kind of can give you a lot of musical foundation, and music theory is just a natural part of learning the piano, and you end up learning treble clef and bass clef, and that would be a wonderful basis for if you are thinking, I want to, again, I'm just thinking about somebody who maybe either wants to go into music education or a composer. That would be a really great foundation for being able to compose music. And then you could say, I really need to understand the flute or whatever it is. Go from piano to more things. Many musicians I know, they play a primary instrument, a very specific instrument, and they do piano. And let's say you do want to go to music school. Getting to know the piano now is helpful, because eventually you do have to take piano class as part of your undergraduate degree. And if you've never done it in your life, it can be kind of torturous. If you have already an understanding of the piano, you'll get through those classes quite easily. So I wanted to add that too.
Yes, and I would agree with Mrs. Barnes in terms of piano, and that would be in some respects the one exception that I really would consider adding, because again, it is so different, especially from a bowed string instrument. Very different things in terms of, as Mrs. Barnes said, you're playing two clefs. You've got treble clef and bass clef. With viola, of course, you're learning alto clef. So at that point, then you'd be learning three clefs, which is certainly, I think, in a general sense, a very good thing. Piano's so different in the sense that not only treble and bass clef, but you're looking at chords, essentially double stops. You're playing multiple notes at one time, which is hugely advantageous just to getting a sense of how harmonies work. So that's a marvelous skill to have. I would also agree with Mrs. Barnes, and I had the experience myself at conservatory where I'd never played piano my whole life, and I was performance major, San Francisco Conservatory, and I was required to not only take piano, but I had to pass proficiency. And it was just, oh my goodness gracious. I had very good fortune at that point, because I had a wonderful teacher, but he was very compassionate and very patient with me in the beginning. So I managed to squeak through proficiency and get it done. But there aren't many things I would change in my life. I'm a pretty happy guy all the way around and all that kind of thing. But one of the things I would do differently would have been to continue studying piano and learning piano all through my viola studies, because I think it really is just an asset to have that extra aspect and perspective within practicing musical instruments.
I wanted to back up again about, so there's so many ways to look at this, of the idea of what is your objective. Be careful not to jump around from instrument to instrument and drop one. Like, keep the viola. It's a wonderful instrument. Hardly anybody plays it compared to other instruments, and so you're always needed in an orchestra or in a university or a school, and then add other things as an addition. If you go from one instrument to the next and just keep on quitting them, it's that old saying, jack of all trades, master of none. You don't want to do that. It's a bad habit. You will never learn how to master anything in your life if you're always doing that. So I wanted to bring up the perspective of, I began violin when I was 5 years old. And I think I've said before, it was like the only thing I was good at in kindergarten. I was a young kindergartner. And I put many years in before I really ever tried other instruments. I added piano and took some lessons and, became kind of proficient. But in some ways, it made me more appreciative of how far I had come on my violin. So I would kind of try other instruments and be like, I like my violin, because there's something really great about being able to do something at a high level. And, I always kept up with the piano to a certain level. And so that made it okay when I was at university, because had to take those classes. And so it was enough that the classes I did fine. But I never really felt the desire to bring the piano up to the level of my violin. I tried guitar at some point. Whenever there was an opportunity to try wind and brass instruments, I was like, no way, not for me. But that was my experience. Was in the end, I wanted to just continue on my violin because I had come so far already. So that's my experience with other instruments.
Yes, well, and absolutely, I feel in a lot of respects very similar. I think, again, with my perspective of really, I think for the most part, sticking with one thing, I think generally is a really good idea, unless you're a composer or a conductor possibly. But I will say, even having said that, I certainly did try some different things myself. So when I was in high school, I decided it might be a little more cool to play the alto saxophone than the viola. Now, not giving up the viola, but I thought kind of in addition to. So I hopped in and learned enough to get my way around with alto sax, and played in the marching band, and played in the pep band, and had some fun. Loved the instrument, and also, relatively speaking, alto saxophone is a much easier instrument to play. Certainly in the beginning, far easier than a bowed string instrument. So you get a lot of satisfaction more quickly. Ultimately, mastering the alto sax is just as hard as anything else. But it's just to say, though, within a few months, I was certainly fairly well versed and enjoyed playing it. So, strangely enough, and you can't make this up, but the orchestra teacher, when they saw that I was playing alto sax, actually asked me to play the bassoon for a Haydn symphony, which was way above my pay grade at that point, and certainly for an instrument I'd never played, and then came to find out how incredibly difficult the bassoon is. So I took it on, did it, played one movement, not the entire symphony, of a Haydn symphony, and have tremendous amount of respect for the instrument. I did have bleeding lips, because this double reed stuff it's a serious commitment, whether you're dealing with bassoon or oboe, and not to mention making reeds and all of that. So as I'm urging, for the most part, folks to stick with one thing, because I think it just helps with the commitment, keeping things simple, and sometimes we just got to keep practicing something that involves a lot of repetition, and sometimes we get bored. And so finding ways to not get bored and staying disciplined and staying on task is challenging, no matter what you're doing. At the same time, I myself was curious enough to try a few other things, and it didn't ruin my learning the viola by any means. So I guess I'm kind of coming around to feeling like there's no absolutes with all of this. I do think about the way I see planet Earth, and with my own sons, grandson now, and students that we deal with in our shop here, folks are very busy, very busy. Academics are very challenging, lots of homework, lots of things to do. So being as busy as I see most people being, it's important to plan and schedule your time. So if you have interest in an instrument, which I think is one of the best things you can get involved with, in terms of something that really is meaningful over your lifetime, it's going to involve scheduling, and it's going to involve finding an appropriate amount of time you can commit to that and whatnot. So if you add more things to that, then you've either got to figure out ways to build in more practice time in the day, or something's going to suffer. So it's just kind of scheduling issues to really consider, and the way one's schedule is in terms of what seems like is realistic.
Remember, and we've touched on this before in another video, that when you fill out your college applications, that it really makes an impression when they see that you've played viola for all the way through high school. Even if you don't want to major in music, if you're going to major in anything else, they see that you've played viola all that time. That tells them a lot about you as a student. First of all, they know your brain is wired up better to study at high levels. Number two, they know that you will be able to have what's called stick-to-itiveness, and not just once college gets hard that you wash out, so that you'll stay in their program and you'll graduate successfully. So when they see that you've been playing one instrument for a long time, they know that you have learned how to master something, and that's the kind of student that they're looking for. So that would be an encouragement to hang on to the viola, and don't let the other instruments eclipse your progress on your viola.
I again agree with Mrs. Barnes. I think we see this these days with, we've got 2 sons in college ourselves. It's hugely advantageous, and the better you are, the more scholarship you're going to get. Being a violist, it's certainly advantageous if you're a really fine violist, because just the sheer numbers are not as many as violin or cello. Certainly, your likelihood of really getting some very good financial aid is high. I think financially speaking, bowed string instruments are probably going to give you more in the way of scholarship a lot of the time than athletics. Not to make this all about me, but I had completely forgotten about this for a moment. I actually did play electric bass also for a while.
That's right.
In a rock band / garage band. When I moved from Nashville, Tennessee out to California. Again, far too much information, but in those days I took a year off before college, which I would never recommend to anybody these days on planet Earth. But I had a great time, and one of which was playing electric bass in a rock band, and I loved that. That was really a lot of fun. So just wanted to throw that in as well.
And I wanted to add to this idea with this scholarship thing. You'll say, well, wait a minute, I'm not going to major in music. How am I going to get a scholarship on viola? If you minor in viola and go to a university that is looking to build their orchestra, and you say, I would like to minor in music and play in your orchestra, they will be so excited, and that's where that scholarship would come from. But even if you don't want to minor in music and you just want to continue to enjoy your instrument at college, they're happy to have you, and it may not be a scholarship thing, but schools are so competitive now that they will say, you're going to play in our orchestra? Okay, there's somebody else who has the same SATs, the same GPA, the same activities all during high school, but you're going to play in our orchestra? We're taking you.
Yes, and also to add to that, I think even if it doesn't affect your college career so much, it's a wonderful asset just to have. Mm-hmm. Socially speaking, I mean, you can play chamber music with friends and stuff like that, and then not only in the orchestra, which you can always offer to join and contribute to, there's things like, some universities, certainly conservatories, have put on opera productions, and then there are musicals, Broadway musicals, a lot of fun to play and be involved with those kinds of things. And it's a nice break from your academics to do some things like that.
We wanted to thank our commenter for the great topic for today, and everybody else, please comment and give us your thoughts on some other topics you would like us to cover. You have, I guess, maybe 60 years of experience, 70 years of experience combined between the two of us of musical life. And so we just have deep knowledge in all different ways. Clearly, you can see we are unscripted. We are just talking off the top of our heads because we can. So thanks so much. Again, like and subscribe. And we truly appreciate you all.